What's going on, everybody? It's Ronnie with RCBASSIN, baby. We're out here on the driveway, got the Bass Tracker Classic XL uncovered. We're getting ready to do an install on this Garmin 93SV UHD. Stay tuned. This one's going to be great. Now, you can't beat this Garmin 93SV UHD. Got this from Bass Pro back in the wintertime. There was a holiday sale going on. I got this thing for $6.99, regular $1,099, and this sucker's got the GT54 transducer. Man, that's a shoot hot transformer or transducer. Can't wait to get this thing mounted up on the dash of the Bass Tracker Classic XL and get this motor scooter on the water, baby, and start hooking them up. Now, the first thing we got to do is take this janky thing off of the dash here. This was from that old Hook 2 or Hook 4X, whatever it is. You can see there's 4 screws up here that looks like it holds this thing on. And I think when you rotate it around, there's a couple on the base underneath because this thing swivels. I'm out here filming by myself, so I'm going to take this thing off and then we'll see what it looks like underneath. Now, here's what it looks like when it comes off. And then you got to take some little screws out here on the top. And I took a screwdriver and tried to just pop this loose so that you could get that that power and transducer adapter out of that housing. And for those of you who own the Bass Tracker Classic XL, you know what I'm talking about. Now, to kind of better explain this, because I'm filming by myself, you'll see here you got to turn the base kind of catty corner to get to the screws right there. You'll see how that hole lines up. To get them out off of the dash, and then when you get those 4 screws removed in each of the corners, that's what you're left with. And then you have to separate that base like I showed you before to get that cable out, because it won't fit through that slot. And you can see there's a little wire tie here holding your cables in place so they don't pull out. So we snipped that wire tie and dropped the cable back down through. So we snipped that wire tie, dropped that cable down through the dash, and that's what you're left with after you take that bracket off. There's the bracket. The cables drop down through the dash. Now it's time to get up underneath the console there and see if we can get to where that's spliced into the to the wiring harness. Now here we are. We're up underneath the console, and you can see right here there's a group of wires that are inside this little mesh bag. They're tied up. And then up here, all of your wiring, your primary wiring for everything is tied together here with a single zip tie. Here are the power and the transducer cable that came out of the old fish finder, and you can see they're tied up in this wiring harness. So we're going to have to cut this zip tie and drop that wiring harness down. So you got to be very careful. You don't want to cut into any of your other wires. And then we'll tie all that back up real neat when we're done finding the power source for the transducer, so we can remove all that and then tie the new fish finder in. So we found our power source. You can see it's spliced in right here, and there's an inline fuse as well. And then over here is the transducer cable, and that runs down along the throttle mechanism through that cover on the side of the boat. I'll show you that in a second, all the way back where it crosses over the transom of the boat and is mounted down at the bottom. Now your transducer cable runs up and under your throttle cover here on the side of the boat. I've had this off before because I put the Garmin 73SV up on the dash, or a 7-inch Garmin. I'm not sure if it's side view or not, but there's about 4 screws, I think. 1, 2, maybe 3, or 2 or 3 up here on the top that hold this panel on at the top. And you don't have to take it loose at the bottom. You can manage to take it loose at the top and kind of pull this back a little bit, enough to give you clearance to get that transducer cable out and put your other transducer cable in. And then back here, this is just a cover that covers the wiring that goes back to the transom, and there's 4 screws that hold that in. And again, I've had this off before, so this won't be my first time taking it off. So hold on 1 second, we'll get this loosened up, and then we'll start working our way to the back and getting that transducer cable out. So when you get that top piece loose, right, you can see over here, here's your cabling from that old fish finder from the hook, and you can just start to grab that and pull it out and work it through. It actually is underneath the edge of this console, so you have to kind of pull it through there. There's a hole where that cabling runs through, and it's right by the throttle cabling and everything else. So got this top piece loose. You can start to work that transducer cable out and work its way back, and then next we have to remove that panel on the back covering the wiring. So we've got the back cover open now, or the side cover, and it was a pain in the butt. It was actually threaded underneath the steering cables down here. So you know, they didn't really take a whole lot of time in making sure the cabling was straight up in here. They just kind of wrapped it however they could wrap it and wired it together. So you're gonna have to take your time and maybe put a little muscle behind raising those steering cables, because they're really stiff to get that cabling out. But just keep working with it, and you'll get back to the back. So I've got my other transducer down there from my Garmin 73, and you can see the transducer for the 93SV. I'm just wondering if I'm going to have problems there with interference between the two. We're going to give it a shot and see how it works. If it doesn't work out, we're probably going to have to move that 73 over to the right, or maybe just take it off altogether. But I've got the transducer installed, and I actually had to put the bracket on upside down to make sure that it was level with the bottom of the boat, so that I didn't have to drill more holes into the hull of my boat. And you can see the 73 sets down a little bit lower than I'd like for it to, but we may play with that too and see what happens. And then I've got the cable ties mounted back, and we're just going to zip tie these two together as they go up into the back of the boat. And then I've got the rest of the transducer cable here so that I can start to run it behind the access panel up to the dash mount. Okay, we got our cable covers back on. Got the transducer cable in all the way up here to the throttle cover, and got our wires ran through, and we're getting ready to wire up the dash and mount up the fish finder bracket. All right, we've got everything, all the wiring done. Everything's wrapped up back up underneath the dash. We've got the fish finder mounted up here on the console. Another successful job here. So now we'll be running twin 93SV UHDs on the 2020 Bass Tracker Classic XL.